Hello, my friends! Welcome to a brand new episode of the Christ and Coffee Podcast, uniting Christians one coffee hour conversation at a time. My name is Pastor Hike, and I am so grateful that you are listening to this week's episode, where we welcome Pastor Jiro all the way from Lebanon. He sits down and discusses his journey to ordained ministry and what it's like ministering in the context of an economic collapse in Lebanon. He discusses how the Armenian evangelical institutions shaped him as an individual and nurtured his calling into full-time ministry. There's so many insights as we learn about his journey into ministry. But before we begin, please do me a favor. If you could like, subscribe, comment, and follow this program on the respective platforms that you're listening to it, it'll do wonders for us. Please, it doesn't take much time. Just hit a like button, hit a comment button, and help promote the Christ and Coffee podcast. All right, enough of me talking. Let's grab a cup of coffee and enjoy this week's conversation. God bless you. Hey, brother, welcome. I think you're the guest who's traveled the farthest to be on this program in person.
Thank you. Ike.
So good to see you, man. How was your flight over from the Middle East, from Lebanon?
It was smooth, so praise God we made it safely. I'm also very glad that we meet again.
Yeah.
It's been 5 years, but I'm very happy.
Yeah. We met in Yerevan, and that was such an amazing conference trip, and we've been in touch ever since.
Yes.
But we haven't seen each other face to face in a long time.
Yes, you're right.
And a lot has happened. You were pastoring in Syria, and now you moved to Lebanon, 4 years ago?
I moved to Lebanon during March 2020.
And that's where you're from originally?
Yes, I'm Lebanese, born and raised in Lebanon. I served the Armenian Evangelical Churches of Kasab for 5 years, from 2015 till 2020. And after that, I had a transitional period for 15 months in Beirut, where I served in 2 churches, mainly with the young people, with the youth groups of these churches, and at the same time, sometimes leading worship at church on Sundays and preaching at the 2 churches. After which, in 2021, after prayer, my wife and I accepted to pastor the first Armenian Evangelical Church in Beirut, which is located in the heart of Beirut, near Ghazarian University.
Which is the only, Christian school in the country? Or, the area?
It's now the only Armenian school in West Beirut.
In West Beirut.
Because when Lebanon experienced its civil war, and when the civil war happened, it was a highly populated Armenian place. But after the war, all Armenians moved from West Beirut towards the east to Burj Hamud, Antelias, Zal'a, and further. So that's why now...
they fled all together. That's how I ended up here. Yeah.
Yes. So it's still a vibrant street, because we have the Armenian Evangelical College in the street, and at the same time we have Ghazarian University. So it's a place crowded with students. So we praise God for the church, for the school, and for the university.
And that's what brings you here, right? On this trip is...
Yes, the main purpose of my trip is to celebrate the centennial of the Armenian Evangelical College in Los Angeles, particularly because the graduates of AEC, after they left Lebanon, they mainly live in LA area, and those who live further are also coming to join us on a 3-day celebrations. So first day, it's an introduction, and people will meet each other after all these years. Second day, there will be a panel discussion on the idea of the schools in the diaspora, the Armenian schools, and how to continue, or how to keep the continuity of Armenian evangelical schools and Armenian schools in general in the diaspora. And same night we have the gala dinner, where we're expecting over 220 people. And we're concluding everything with a church service that will take place at the United Armenian Congregational Church.
Amazing, amazing. So when you say Armenian Evangelical College, is that like an undergraduate school? Is it a high
Yes,
school? What is it?
The Armenian Evangelical College is a school.
What is okay?
So we have from kindergarten to 12th grade. So this is the school, but it's the first secondary school. It's the first Armenian secondary school after the genocide in all the world. In all the world.
Yeah.
So now it's centennial, and we have around 120 students now, and it's known for its high quality of education.
And it's from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Yes.
But the word is college.
Yes,
it's
but
a little confusing.
The word is college. Yeah.
I think this is an important legacy because we're both from the Armenian Evangelical movement. 1846, 40 men and women gather in Istanbul, bring revival. And I think a huge part of our legacy for the Armenian community is schools.
Yes.
But it's amazing that this panel is happening because what's happening as the diaspora is assimilated and whatnot. Yeah. What's the future of secondary education?
Yeah, because in the Armenian evangelical mindset, schools are the primary platform of evangelism. So if an Armenian evangelical, in the understanding of our union, in the Armenian evangelical minister or the layperson or the leader or the one who loves the Lord has a big passion to serve Armenian people and Lebanese citizens, to lead them in higher learning, and at the same time to do all this higher learning with a Christian spirit. So So if we want to raise awareness about Christianity, about the Bible, about Christian living, about discipleship, we do it through our schools. And there's something very nice that happens in our schools is that every day the school starts with a half an hour of a chapel. So students gather in the church, and we have guest speakers, we have preachers that come along and share a reflection or a meditation before the students are dismissed.
Did you grow up in one of these schools?
Yes. My kindergarten was in a school called Ghazarian, Levon Ghazarian. But after my father passed away in 1999, because my uncles and my aunts studied in Anjar, so they sent me to the Armenian Evangelical Church of Anjar. So when I was a fifth grader, it was then that I experienced that school, and particularly the Armenian Evangelical School in general and the Armenian Evangelical Church, they start their school day with a chapel, with a small worship service where you have the Badveli, the preacher, or the village priest, because all the Armenian churches are in good connection and they are in good fellowship. So that's why ministers come along, teachers come along, and they share a short meditation and a reflection. And after we pray for the day, we are dismissed to our classes. So I lived in this tradition from the age of 10 till the age of 17.
Yeah, it's amazing because there's an interesting trend happening in America. So I think like Catholic schools are a big thing here. They're the private schools, and they kind of have a similar ethos of this is how we evangelize for them. But in Southern California, there's a lot of Christian schools, nurseries, and in this area more so than from what I perceived on the East Coast. Because my son is turning 3, he's going to Christian school. He starts the once a week chapel and everything. And I think with the current trends of the public schools in America, there's more of a drive that's happening right now for younger families to take their kids to private schools, which usually means Christian, and also homeschools, which homeschooling used to be kind of looked down upon. Now it's becoming more popularized,
I see.
well, not just by the Christian community that's scared of the secular world, but in general. That seems to be the trend right now in America. But there's a sadder trend happening on the higher education. Christian universities are shutting down.
Oh, I see.
There's not enough supply and demand. Seminaries are struggling too because as the church is declining in the West, that means less students are going to pursue ministry, and the cost of going to Christian school is really high. And then what kind of degree are you going to get out of that? So I want to pivot the conversation a bit to kind of your ordination process. So what does it look like for higher education? Is it the Near East schools, kind of the main Christian Protestant school in the whole for the whole Middle East, right?
Yes. So the Union of the Armenian Evangelical Churches in the Near East has a very clear process for a person who is called to be a minister. So I'm not saying who is interested to be a minister, who is called to be a minister. So when God calls you to ministry, the union has set a trail.
So just to be clear, you belong to the Armenian Evangelical Union.
I belong to the Union of the Armenian Evangelical Churches in the Near East.
Near East. That includes Syria, Lebanon.
That includes Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Iraq. We have some community in Egypt, Turkey, and then we also have Greece and Australia.
So pretty much the Australia one is random
Greece and Australia are not in the Near East.
The middle of it.
Yes, but they are part of the union. Yes.
Amazing. And this is a network of churches, but they function like a denomination.
There are union of the churches. So the headquarters is in Beirut, Lebanon.
Yeah. And you grew up in this community. It's connected to this high school.
Yes.
And you felt the calling into ministry.
Yes. So the concept is like this. Whenever you see an Armenian Evangelical Church, you automatically see a school beside it.
Yeah.
So the school and the church are in sync. They are always connected. They are always in fellowship, because the graduate of the school has to be a balanced, a faithful person in society, and they have to also be encouraged to be spiritually also healthy and sound.
But a large part of this too is these churches and these schools are from a post-genocide society, right? So it's their way of keeping their religion, keeping their cultural identity. It's a both-and holistic sort of approach.
Exactly. You have to keep your cultural identity, your spiritual identity, your national identity, and you have to use this in your local residency, or country, and use it to enrich also the country that you're living in. Because many minorities, for example, came to Lebanon, and many minorities also live in Syria, but the Armenian minority is respected because they, for example, enriched industry, they enriched arts, they enriched the musical understanding. So they were very much so appreciated by the governments who let them in after genocide.
Yeah.
So in a way, I can say that we are not a burden for these governments. In the opposite, we are not also guests. We are citizens of that.
Yeah, of course.
We are citizens of that place, and we enrich the country with our presence and with our talents and with whatever God gives us to pass to.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about. So you grew up in this kind of upbringing.
Yes.
You feel the call into ministry. Mm-hmm. What's that process like to go to the nearest school?
Yes. So administratively, the union has a committee who accepts union students to be part of the journey of learning and the journey of becoming a minister. So the journey starts by you giving your testimony to this committee, letting them know why you're choosing to be a minister, what purpose do you have in mind? What are the motives that you chose ministry? And this committee sees you eligible for this, and they accept you, and then they take their decision to the general assembly that happens every year. So the general assembly is composed of all the representatives of the churches that are part of the union, and they vote for it. And after they vote for it, you're officially in the process. So as a start, because the union has Haigazian University as its higher learning place, this student enrolls in Haigazian University, attends Haigazian University, and usually are encouraged to choose majors that have to do in humanities, or majors that have to do with that can help you in the future to serve.
So to understand, Haigazian is like the undergraduate studies,
Yes.
and then the Near East is masters,
Yes, it's the MDiv.
MDiv.
Yes.
And do you have to be called at an early age, or could you be called later in life? Does it matter?
Yes, you can be called later in life.
But for younger people who feel like
Yes.
called,
For example, if I take my example, I got enrolled in Haigazian University as a psychology and education major.
Huh?
So the major you choose is very important, because you have to somehow benefit from the undergraduate degree and use it and make use of it in your ministry. For example, social work. There's tons of social work now that has to happen. After the inflation and all the hardships that Lebanon faced, social work and social workers are the primary soldiers who go visit every house, and they write the needs, and they meet the needs of the ones who are in need. Social work is one of them. Armenian literature is another. Armenian studies is another option. Psychology is another option, because you get to understand the human mind and the behavior and the reasons of how people behave and why they behave that way. Education as a major, because we have schools, you can give your input in schools. So usually this is called a pre-theology student.
Got it.
So we use the seminary's dorm as our place to live, and the Near East School of Theology, the administration of the Near East School of Theology, calls these people pre-theology students, because they have the promise from the union and from the student that when they graduate Haigazian University, they will continue their education at NEST.
And so they could take advantage of the housing and stuff.
They can take advantage of the housing, the food, and especially the community.
Yeah.
So you get used to the community, because NEST doesn't have only theology students. It also has residents from other universities. So they form this very beautiful group.
So what kind of students go to these schools? Is Haigazian all Armenian evangelicals?
Oh no, Haigazian has, let's say, the mosaic of the Lebanese society.
Which is what?
You see, there are Muslims, there are Druze, there are Armenians, there are Maronites. It's a mix.
It's the whole representation.
Exactly, it's the whole representation, and you see them there in a very healthy fellowship.
Because they know they're going to a Christian school, but it's not forced on them.
Yes, because Haigazian is, if I'm not mistaken, is the only university, is the only Armenian university outside of diaspora, and at the same time, it is one of the only universities that has a campus minister and a spiritual life. So every Wednesday, when I was a student, we had a chapel, and the campus minister gave a message, and we had retreats, and even in those retreats and in those in spiritual life, we had also many people mixed from mixed religions.
So then, you graduate from this undergraduate studies, Haigazian University, then you go to the Near East School right after?
Yes, right after.
Just because you already know. And what's the student body makeup at the Near East School?
The Near East School of Theology is a school partnered by 5 different churches, mainline Protestant churches, Armenian Evangelical, National Evangelical Synod of Syria and Lebanon, the Episcopal Church, the Lutheran Church. So all this come together and form the board, and each church sends their students to study theology at the school. So when I was a student, I had a Lebanese classmate from the National Evangelical Synod of Syria and Lebanon, and at the same time I had a classmate from Palestine that will serve later in the Anglican Church. So they come from these different denominations from the mainline evangelical churches, and they study there. And also you have now we recently have an online platforms for those who would want to have a theological study diploma. They can engage in that. And after MDiv, NEST also has, and the New York School of Theology also has a second master's program, which I am currently enrolled in. It is called Sacred Theology Masters, STM. It's a further study after the MDiv, which is more specialized in a certain direction.
What are you specializing in right now?
New Testament ecclesiology.
What's ecclesiology?
Well, ecclesiology is when you have basically, because it is New Testament ecclesiology, you look at the different books of the New Testament, the different epistles of the New Testament, the Gospels, and you see how each community and how each Gospel writer viewed Jesus Christ. What idea of how did they understand God? How did they understand the church? And then you see that there's a Petrine understanding of what is the church. There's a Pauline understanding of what is the church, and there's the Gospel's understanding of how church goes forward. So in this matter, you learn how the church functions, and at the same time, what the different theologies these Gospels presented, the Gospel writers presented, or the Epistle writers presented.
So like Luke, for example, focuses more on like the poor, as an example, and like the making sure you're taking care of the poor, versus John is more heavy, big picture theology.
Yeah.
So, and then there's, I guess, different church traditions would pick certain sections of scripture to emphasize, and they make current decisions and structures based on,
for example,
on what they emphasize.
Yeah. For example, one of the things that I learned in the course, it was a tutorial.
Yeah.
So sometimes you think that as an Armenian evangelical church, you're very Pauline. And then it turns out that no, you also are Petrine in some way. Because
Petrine is what, Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never heard that word. Okay.
You see that you're Petrine in some way because in the epistles,
you're stubborn.
Yeah, in the epistles of Peter, for example, there's the idea of priesthood of all believers. So you're very close to that as an Armenian evangelical church, and then you see that Christianity is all the New Testament taken together, bringing it closer together and forming a good understanding of it.
Yeah, and that's beautiful because the mission of this podcast is uniting Christians one coffee hour conversations at a time.
Yeah.
But you just kind of described that with a very academic language. So thank you. Yeah. So, okay, cool. You're studying this right now. So then you graduate from the Near East School. Do you get ordained right away, or how does that work?
So ordination in the Armenian Evangelical Church is a very, very serious endeavor. It's a very serious process because you don't own ordination. You don't? No.
You don't own the reverend title?
Yes, you don't own it.
Okay.
The congregation, after you, so you graduate from the Armenian Evangelical, you graduate from the Near East School of Theology.
So you get your master's in the
yes,
theology?
And then the first step is after you graduate, the nearest General Assembly during that General Assembly, you have to apply for a preaching license, a preaching permit.
Interesting.
So when you apply for that preaching permit, the president of the union and at the same time the elected secretary of the General Assembly presents your request to earn the preaching permit. So the General Assembly has to approve on that.
This is just to preach, not to be ordained.
Yes.
Okay.
So when the General Assembly says yes, of course, this is a dry language. They say yes with prayer and with encouragement, encouraging the new student, the new preacher to go forward with God's love, with God's grace, and lead the church. So if you are called to be a pastor of a church, then the Central Committee of the Union, they assign where your next field work will be.
This is like a really drawn out internship. But it's like, but
Yeah,
you're kind of
in the Western understanding, it's internship, but in the union, in our union's understanding, no, the internship happens the 7 years that you're studying because during those 7 years, the Central Committee of the Union, every year they send you to a field. That's why during our years of being a student, we are called field workers.
Got it.
So this is a very popular term in our churches, field work. So for example, they assign you to serve in a teenage group of this church. So you do 1 year of that. The second year, they assign you to the youth group of another church. This is second year. Third year, they assign you to lead worship from the pulpit. Then, as you are close to your MDiv graduation, you start to preach once a month, and then these all years of studies. During the years of study, the Central Committee sends you to different fields, and you're a field worker.
Great.
And that counts as the internship.
And that makes sense because that's a proper understanding of an internship is to figure out what
and
different types of ministry.
having in mind that all field workers and all theology students during summer are present in the summer camps that take place in Kachak or in Syria's Kachak.
Amazing.
So you already have this 7 years
So
of
seminary experience is very hands-on then.
Yes.
It's not just academic. It's
Yes.
You're the types of ministries you could potentially be doing full
Yes.
time. And then you graduate, and then what's the field work you're saying?
Yeah.
The after the
Yes.
this whole
So when the
process.
General Assembly approves of your of granting you the preaching permit, then the Central Committee assigns a place for you to serve. If you're called to be a pastor, you start pastoring a church. In my case, it happened. I graduated in 2014, February 2014. I went to minister the Armenian Evangelical Churches of Kesab on March 1, 2015.
Was the Syrian Civil War already started or just about to start?
Yes, Kesab was under attack, and after the people were deported to Latakia, and after 87 days, the Syrian army got back Kesab, and after about 9-10 months, I went to Kesab.
So you're going right in after an invasion and the recapture.
Right in. I had to pastor the 4 Armenian evangelical churches in Kesab, and it was a very hard road, but it also it teaches you how to persevere and go forward and rely on God.
Because it's the war still going on.
Yes.
It's hectic
Yes.
Electricity might be out.
When I was there, war was more. The understanding of war was more on the ground military operations, missiles, indefinite. You don't know the time, you don't know the place. They just come on you. Now the understanding of war is different. It's purely economical, and recently again we're seeing some again military action
Is this in Syria or Lebanon?
in Syria.
In Syria.
Yeah.
So so you I mean that's an amazing or extremely difficult place to serve your first church in the middle of a war. So how long does it take you to be ordained? Do you get ordained after a year?
Yes. So ordination has some deep understanding. So ordination is when you start to pastor a church, and after some years, the people of the church and the joint board starts to see. They have to see the ordained in you.
So they confirm the calling that's in you.
Yes. Because you're working together, you're serving together. It's like a time of knowing each other, a time of getting to serve with each other. And then the church sees the ordained in you. And when that happens, they raise a letter to the central committee of the union. And then the union central committee brings this to the General Assembly again. So when the General Assembly approves, then you go to the ordination committee, and the ordination committee prepares a test. Back in the old days, like before 20 years, the test was very difficult because this is how it happened. Imagine the General Assembly is happening. Everybody is there. Every church representative is there. Every lay theologian is there. Every pastor is there. So the president of the union, in front of everybody, you don't know what questions they prepare. They ask you the question right on the spot. And the questions entail biblical, theological, historical, Armenian, nationalistic and Armenian history, and also practical theology questions. So the pastor had to answer all these theological dense
in front of the whole community.
On the spot in front of everybody. But later, as time passed by, the ordination committee changed the system. It transformed it into a paper. So a 20-page paper where...
Like an exam?
Like an exam. Okay. You have all these questions. They give you a certain time to answer them. You answer them and then you submit them. And the committee members check it. And they write notes and they write their questions. And after they read your test, you're called again to meet with them. So when you meet them, they start asking you questions about the answers that you had.
Got it. So it's more structured.
Yes. Like, what did you mean when you said when you wrote this?
Does it happen quickly when the congregation says you're ready to be ordained, or does it happen like after a year, or does it
after a year?
Okay.
Because the church should pray with you in the process as you prepare to get ordained and to serve the sacraments and to be the reverend of the church.
And then what's the final step for ordination? I think I remember you telling me this because I think this is fascinating.
Yeah, we have a very interesting final step. So the ordination service is happening, and right before the pastor gets ordained, there was a tradition before the committee or the pastors and the partner churches also are invited. The churches where you have a relationship with, like other Protestant churches and other, with an ecumenical understanding, other church representatives are also there. So the last question is targeted to your wife. Now, this pastor gave his testimony. The church approves of this. We approve of this. But sort of, they asked the wife, "Do you think that this is true?" And your wife, if she sees that it is true, she says yes. And the idea is that if you want to take, if you think of church as family, so if you are not a good caretaker of your immediate family, how will you take care of the bigger family?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the idea. This was the idea behind it.
Amazing. So, and then your wife could make or break this entire process in one question. She says, "No, it's like, what did I just spend the last 7
may
years,
happen.
10 years?"
It may happen.
So, we recorded an episode talking about your time pastoring in Syria. If people want to listen, you could look into the old archive of season 1 of the podcast when it was all over Zoom, not with this fancy technology we have now. But then you transitioned from Kesab back to your hometown in Beirut.
In Beirut, yes.
So you went from a civil war, and then when you came back to Beirut, there was economic collapse and destruction. Like
Exactly.
How? Like you went from one extreme to another extreme.
To another extreme, to a very harsh economic collapse. It was very bad and very disappointing because people worked all these years. They kept their money at the bank with the hope that when they reach a certain age to just try to relax a bit, and they found out that all their money is gone.
So that meant that was because the Lebanese currency became obsolete pretty much overnight.
Yes. It started to deteriorate gradually, but when I say gradually, it's a fast graduation. So that happened, and then COVID happened, and after COVID happened, the big explosion of Beirut happened. Like economic crisis, COVID, Beirut port explosion, and these three events were very dense. They were very harsh for the human mind, for the human heart. And after that, life in Lebanon was not the same. It was not the same. People struggled. They were thrown out of their homes overnight. Some businesses closed because if your store or if your business exploded, you don't have. You may not have the funds to rebuild. Mm-hmm. But I remember one very positive thing, that the second day of the explosion, almost all the city's youth were on the streets with shovels, with every tool possible, and they cleaned everything in just 2 weeks. It was unbelievable.
Amazing.
So if you happen to visit Beirut after the port explosion by 3 weeks, you would not feel that the street had that damage. But the work that was done overnight by Lebanese youth was remarkable. We also formed small groups, and we went to clean houses, churches, schools, and we were very harshly hit.
By 3 different seismic things, and it's still not recovered for the economy.
Yes, the economic is not recovered. We have problem of basic services, but praise God that our unions institutions are now almost on solar power. So we have solar panels on every church and school, and that helped so much. It really weared off all the pressure that we had, because electricity is a luxury in Lebanon. It's not something you have all day till now.
Wow. Wow,
Like the government electricity is just supported 4 hours or 6 hours maximum a day. So the other, if you remove 6 hours from 24 hours, so 18 hours have you have to supply that 18 hours by third-party generators, which is a very expensive thing to have.
Of course, that's quite remarkable. It's crazy to think about how, like, what's the difference between the Syrian Civil War versus the economic collapse? Is it very connected, or is it like, how would you say these traumatic experiences for the flock have been?
Yeah, it is connected with the difference of Syria's war has been ongoing and it's not stopping.
Okay.
So it has been 13 years.
Like it's crazy to think about.
That's a lot of years.
It's interesting how it's not brought back because of all the other
to be
wars.
To be in war for 13 years, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, but Lebanon had a long history of civil war.
Right.
So I don't like to use this term, but Lebanese have become resilient in targeting a certain difficulty. But after what happened the last 4 years, you cannot be resilient.
Because there's no backing at all.
You just crash.
Yeah.
But the church is there. Schools are there. The union is there. Pastors are there. Theologians are there. Leaders are there. Those who love the Lord are there to reignite hope in people and to remind people that there is still hope for us. So that's why we're hopeful. We work a lot. We want to prosper. We want to go forward. And we do our best so that our students also and our congregants also feel empowered with the service that we have, with the joint spirit of Christian living that we have.
And it's amazing how much these institutions have structure to it, and just the delicate process of walking someone throughout that ordination process. Because I think the number one way to know if you're called, if you should scare them away from it. And a lot of people would be scared, and especially today, where like a lot of people could just go online, get a reverend degree, officiate a wedding. And I think a problem in the church is the lack of candidates for a ministry in the Western world, at least, but also the rigor of walking through the process of, knowing the Bible really well, having these internship opportunities. Because a lot of times people feel called and they want immediate access to leadership, which is foolish because it'll set that person up for failure. But I love this delicate process that I think is being lost in general because the supply of pastors is low in general. There's not this sifting of training, equipping, building the called person up.
Yeah.
So are you grateful for this whole process, or you wish like you could have just got a Bible degree and called it a day?
No, I'm grateful for this process because the test that you have is also a chance to revisit, work on, rethink about your self-understanding as a Christian pastor and your understanding as an Armenian pastor, and how you view yourself, how you think about theological issues, how you think about biblical issues, how you think about practical issues, how you think about pastoral care. Because during service in these regions, you don't have much time to think about these stuff.
I think that's the best advice to give people who are currently studying for ministry. Appreciate this time of study, reflection. Because once you start, you won't have much time to do that.
Because ordination is also a time of reflecting on many theological issues, on many biblical issues, on many national issues, on many practical issues.
And And I've noticed this in some clergy where they didn't spend the rigorous time to ask those difficult questions. They get caught up in the ministry and then they start having the questions, their doubts, this and that, and that they never really addressed at this developmental stage.
Yeah.
And then they kind of get checked out / maybe leave altogether because they haven't gone through the difficult deconstruction of the Bible or the difficult theological problems there could be, the doubts there could be. I mean, it's biblical too, going back to the Pauline eschatology, like ecclesiology. He got called into ministry, had this powerful encounter with the risen Jesus, and then he disappears for like 7 years in Saudi Arabia or something. And then he shows up on the scene, and then he eventually becomes an apostle, and then he does his ministry. But there's this sense of immediate, especially in the American mindset.
Yeah, because the text does not directly reveal the time frame of that.
Yeah.
You just think it's a continuous story.
It's nonstop action from Paul. No, there's times he's just sitting in a prison cell. And that's it.
Yeah. And there's one thing that is very important, I think, and something that I appreciate about our churches is that we don't focus on doctrinal disputes. So we focus on our relationship with other churches. That's why when you ask around in Lebanon and in Syria particularly, or in other countries, nobody views the Armenian Evangelical Church as a church who argues with people theologically, because we are not doctrinal in that sense. We are relational.
Yeah,
we like to relate with other people. You barely hear an Armenian Evangelical Church having a theological dispute with this other church. It never happens, because keeping the Christian spirit alive and the relationship and the fellowship is much more important than having a dispute over
Calvinist versus Arminian.
Exactly, a certain doctrine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have very specific, clear understanding of who we are, and we learn that in confirmation class. We teach it at confirmation class, and and that's how people become communicant members. And when they become communicant members, they sort of promise God and promise their church congregants to be faithful to this understanding of what we believe as a creed.
Yeah. That's beautiful. The structure and the emphasis.
So for us, as long as you remain in the creed, you are solid. When you go outside of the creed, you start having a shaky ground.
Amen to that. Yeah. That's really fascinating to think about and hear about, because I've never been to Lebanon yet, but I've been shaped by everything you just mentioned as an Western Armenian evangelical.
Yeah.
And now as you're talking, I'm reflecting on.
I've been nagging for 5 years. We're waiting for you to come.
I'm coming. I'll be there soon. Anyway, brother, we'll do an episode in Lebanon next time.
Oh yeah, that would be very good.
Well, John, you're coming over to Beirut. We're gonna party.
John is great.
And also get another interview. And I'll talk about the American educational process.
Okay.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. So good to see you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the end of this episode. God bless you. Stay caffeinated, my friends, and have a blessed week. Much love. Take care.